I was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows of my Manhattan penthouse, the early morning light catching the gold threads of my silk blouse. My fingers traced the rim of my coffee cup, warm and smooth, but my mind was elsewhere, on a single buzzing notification that refused to leave my consciousness. My phone lay on the glass table, vibrating insistently. A message from my mother. "Can we come over? There's someone we want you to meet." I let out a soft, ironic laugh, running a hand through my hair. After years of being invisible to them, after my engagement had been dismissed, my choices ignored, now they wanted to come into my world. My world. The city below hummed with life. Taxis honking, pedestrians rushing, sirens faint in the distance. And here I was, calm on the surface, but my chest still held the memory of years of hurt. Pride was a fine silk coat, but beneath it, the old wounds still whispered. I glanced around my apartment. Modern art curated with meticulous care, rare books stacked neatly, the scent of freshly brewed espresso mingling with jasmine from the balcony. It wasn't just a home. It was proof. Proof I could build, flourish, and thrive even when those who should have celebrated me had turned away. And now they were coming, expecting a scene they couldn't even imagine. I remember that afternoon as if it were carved into my memory. I was 24, standing in my childhood living room in Chicago, clutching the engagement ring Jason had given me. The light from the bay window cast long shadows across the carpet, but it couldn't soften the cold walls between us. "Mom, Dad, I wanted to tell you. I'm engaged," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, yet trembling with hope. My father didn't look up from his newspaper. My mother pursed her lips, adjusting the pearl necklace she wore to hide some unspoken judgment. "That's nice, Emily," my father finally said without warmth. "Are you sure about this? Have you thought about the timing?" My heart lurched. Timing? It wasn't the engagement that mattered to them. It was that it wasn't their idea, that I had dared to choose my own path. My hands shook, the ring almost slipping from my fingers. I felt invisible, dismissed in the very house where I had grown up, where my laughter had once filled the halls. Every word I had hoped would be met with joy turned into a lump in my throat, every glance from them a silent verdict of disapproval. It was my grandmother, Ruth, who saw the truth I could not yet articulate. She had been sitting in the corner, knitting, eyes warm but sharp. She reached out and took my hand. "Emily, remember," she said, voice soft but steady, "the world is bigger than the expectations of those who cannot see your light. One day, you'll build something they can't ignore. But you must believe in it in yourself first." Her words were a seed planted deep in my heart, even as the sting of rejection burned. That night, after everyone had left, I packed a small bag, my laptop, a few clothes, and her little silver locket she had pressed into my hand. I didn't know exactly where I was going or how I would survive, but I knew this. I would no longer wait for validation from people who couldn't see me. It was the moment I chose independence over approval, self-belief over disappointment, and the first step toward a life they could never have imagined. I left Chicago with nothing but a small suitcase, my grandmother's locket, and a fierce determination not to be defined by rejection. New York became my sanctuary, a place where ambition and resilience could grow without the shadows of judgment following me. The first months were brutal. I worked odd jobs, barista by morning, freelance graphic designer by night, learning every lesson the city had to teach. Rejection emails piled up in my inbox, clients who promised opportunity vanished without explanation, and more than once I wondered if I'd made a mistake leaving home. Then I met Clara Thompson, a seasoned event planner who ran one of Manhattan's most prestigious firms. She spotted the spark in me the way my grandmother had. "Emily," she said during our first meeting, "most people don't see potential where it actually exists. But I do. Let me teach you how to turn it into influence." Under her mentorship, I learned the unspoken rules of high society, the art of negotiation, and the elegance of attention to detail. Late nights were my constant companion. I'd sit in my tiny studio apartment, sketching floor plans and drafting proposals, the city lights spilling across my notebook like encouragement. I learned to love the struggle, to savor small victories. My first corporate client, my first successfully hosted gala, my first check large enough to feel like freedom. I kept it all a secret from my parents, posting only modest updates on social media, carefully curated to show life, but not success. I didn't want their doubt or envy creeping into my carefully constructed world. Every achievement was mine, and mine alone. I invested every penny, every late night, every ounce of hope into building my empire. By the time I was 30, I had a portfolio of properties, a flourishing event management company, and invitations from circles I had only ever dreamed of joining. All while my parents remained unaware of the woman I had become, an irony that tasted sweeter than any champagne I had ever poured at my events. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. And the next chapter, the one where my parents would finally see me, was about to unfold in ways they could never imagine. The morning they arrived, I made sure everything was perfect. The mansion was silent except for the faint hum of classical music drifting from the speakers. The marble floors gleamed, reflecting the sunlight streaming through the enormous windows. Rare paintings adorned the walls, and my grandmother's silver locket rested on the polished console table near the entrance, a silent witness to my journey. When the doorbell rang, I smoothed my tailored blazer, adjusted my silk blouse, and let a calm smile take over my face. My parents stood there, expecting to see the unsure, dependent daughter they had ignored years ago. Instead, they were met with a woman in control, poised, and unapologetically successful. "Emily," my mother whispered, stepping into the foyer, eyes wide. My father's jaw tightened, disbelief etched into his face. I guided them through the mansion, letting them take in every detail: the library filled with first editions, the gallery of my curated artwork, the state-of-the-art kitchen I had designed myself. Each space told a story of resilience, creativity, and hard work, none of which they had ever bothered to acknowledge before. Finally, we arrived at the grand living room, where sunlight pooled across the marble floor. I turned to face them fully, letting the weight of the moment settle.
"Mom, Dad, welcome."
"I imagine you thought I'd be struggling, unsure, maybe even dependent. But this," I gestured around me, "this is the life I built. On my own." Their eyes widened further. My father's voice cracked slightly. "Emily, we had no idea." "No," I said softly, "you had no idea. And that's the point." I watched them absorb the truth. My company, my net worth, my ownership of the mansion. The luxury they had assumed I could never attain now lay undeniable before them. For the first time, the power dynamic shifted. I wasn't the girl they ignored. I was the woman they couldn't ignore. The silence was thick, heavy, filled with a mix of shame, awe, and disbelief. I let them feel it, let the truth land without interruption. And in that moment, I realized that victory wasn't in proving them wrong. Victory was in standing tall while they finally saw me as I always had been, capable, resilient, and unstoppable. I let them linger in the living room, absorbing the mansion, the luxury, the life they had once dismissed. Then I spoke, calm but firm. "I built this life, Mom, Dad, without your support. But that doesn't mean I won't help you on my terms." My mother blinked, unsure, and my father's hands fidgeted at his sides. I continued, "I will help you, but I need to know that nothing in the past will repeat itself. That includes dismissing others, holding grudges, or expecting me to compromise my values." I laid out my conditions carefully, one by one. For my parents, they would attend family counseling sessions, learn to listen without judgment, and support each other in positive ways instead of criticizing. For my father, he had to pursue a passion he had shelved years ago, the violin he never played, the writing he never finished. Not for me, but for himself. For my mother, she had to let go of controlling behaviors, learn to value people for who they are, and cultivate empathy. Each condition was tied to emotional growth, accountability, and healing. I could feel the tension in the room, but I also saw a flicker of hope in their eyes. They were beginning to understand that their daughter had not only survived but had grown into a woman who could guide with wisdom, strength, and compassion. "I'm giving you a chance," I said, voice steady but warm. A chance to be part of my life on equal terms. Not because you deserve it automatically, but because I believe people can grow. But this is non-negotiable. The old patterns stop now. Their faces reflected a mixture of humility, shame, and tentative hope. I could see the wheels turning in their minds as they realized the power had shifted completely. I was no longer the girl who waited for approval. I was the architect of my destiny, and now I was offering them a path forward, if they were willing to walk it. For the first time, I felt the satisfying weight of control and compassion together. Firm boundaries, yes, but also the ability to forgive and guide. This was the culmination of years of struggle, the moment where my independence became their reality. Weeks passed, and the changes began quietly but unmistakably. My father picked up his violin again, filling the mansion with music that once had been only a dream. My mother started volunteering at a local women's center, learning to listen, to support, and to celebrate others without judgment. And slowly, ever so slowly, they began to understand me. Not the daughter they had ignored, but the woman I had become. I walked through the mansion one evening, the golden light spilling across the marble floors, and found my grandmother's silver locket resting on the piano. I held it in my hands, feeling its weight, its significance. It had been my talisman all these years, a reminder of belief, resilience, and self-worth. I realized that my journey wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving myself right. It was about standing tall in my own power, building a life that reflected my dreams, and creating space for the people I loved on my terms. Looking out over the city's skyline, the soft hum of the evening traffic below, I smiled to myself. I had endured rejection, heartache, and doubt, but I had transformed it all into strength. And now, as royalty and dignitaries arrived for the charity gala I had organized, a night celebrating my accomplishments and the people I had helped, I felt an exquisite sense of completion. I whispered to no one in particular, my voice carrying both pride and serenity. I am the woman I was always meant to be, and no one can ever take that away. The mansion was alive with laughter, music, and respect, a tangible testament to the journey of a girl ignored, now transformed into a woman who hosts royalty and commands her world with grace, strength, and love.